Well, James, you probably talked out that Orange Bowl performance probably way beyond anything. I'm much too late to the party, but we're going to ask you for one more take on it. And unfortunately, these bowl games have gotten to a place, and this is the classic example. This is the classic example. Every other bowl game, you could say, well, he was out, he was out. What do you, how do you measure these teams? No starting quarterback here. But this was a team that was just decimated and really wasn't the same football team.
Right. And it was crazy going up until the final hour, like right before the game. When Josh Farmer, Brandon Fisk, and Tatum Bethune all were opt-outs like the day of the game, I was like, okay, like this is gonna get ugly really quick because you're on your third string D tackle as a starter going up against them. And a lot of people talk about, well, Georgia had opt-outs, and I always ask them who are the opt-outs? And they'll bring up one, and we'll talk about it. And that's a big one, the tight end, Brett Bowers, but he was hurt. He wasn't an opt-out. He just didn't play. But McConkey, Carson Beck, they had a ton of, like, their starters were there. And one thing we learned was that Florida State's third string guys don't hold a candle to Georgia's starting guys. And, you know, it doesn't matter how good you are when you don't have your strength. And of that strength, I mean, you're talking about 6 NFL guys on offense and 5 to 6 NFL guys on defense. Like, that's just not it's just not going to be a good battle, especially with quarterback. But they did some things that I thought were pretty good. But one thing I'll say is this: we can't say for a whole month this game doesn't matter, this game doesn't matter, this game doesn't matter, and then expect the kids and then get mad at the kids for saying that the game doesn't matter. All of a sudden, it doesn't. Like, if it didn't matter, then whatever the outcome is the outcome, and we don't take that as seriously. Even Kirby Smart, as you said, I mean, the only people who think that was indicative of what the Florida State team in 2023 was are trolls and people who would never be considered for the playoff game or the bowl. And I just think we may get better play with the playoffs next year. I think where Georgia was in a different place. They return a lot as well. So a lot of these guys are going to come back and try to make a playoff run next year. So there was less reason for their starters to opt out as opposed to Florida State guys. A lot of these guys were guys who this was their shot at it, and they were going. And the NFL was the next thing. But Georgia's good, and Georgia did what I expect the bully to do, and it sucked to be on the other side of it, but I think Mike Norvell's speech at the end was really good and indicative. And sometimes things don't go your way, and but you can't just quit and not show up. And that's kind of what happened with Florida State, man. It was definitely a slaughter. I liken it to the Spartans at the 300. I liken it to that because they definitely were slaughtered on that battlefield.
Chris.
I kind of wish that the bowl games mattered like they did 15 years ago. But at the same time, like, we can't ask these kids to give us their all when college football don't give their all. The powers that be said that 13 games that you won didn't matter, so what's the 14th one matter? That's how I think these NFL guys took it, the ones that are going into the NFL. The reason that they opted out is, well, I was told that 13 of the ones we won didn't matter, and everybody keeps saying, well, if you'd have beat Georgia, you'd have proved your point. Proved what point? The point was already proven. There isn't nothing else to prove. You won 13 games. You were a ACC champion, and you got told you weren't good enough. Winning that 14th one wasn't going to automatically put you into a playoff. It didn't mean anything as far as playing in that game. So I'm not mad at any of the kids or any of the young men that didn't go in and play in the game, because this is what college football turned this into. It turned it into not meaning anything outside of the playoffs, which we all call it the Invitational. So If you're not in the Invitational, what's the point in playing the game? Then, everybody said, well, Georgia's guys showed up. They didn't opt out. Yeah, they're coming back. Last year when we went 10-3 and we went and played in our bowl, Jared Verse, Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, all of them played in that game because they were returning to go after a national title this year. Then they went on a 13-game winning streak of this year, and totality was 19, and they got told they weren't good enough. The season ended the moment that the committee said you weren't good enough. There was no sense in another game. It made no sense because you got told 13 didn't matter. How's the 14th one matter? That's all I've got on
it. Yeah, it's just wild. And what's wild is watching Michigan, Alabama, and then watching Texas, Washington. I got Michigan and Washington definitely deserved it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I think, and again, we didn't have Jay Trav, but watching Brock Glenn's performance against a fully strength Georgia defense without Keon Coleman, without Jaheim Bell, without Johnny Wilson, watching him throw for more yards and have more competent quarterback play than the reason why Florida State was excluded in Alabama's, because Alabama had better quarterback play. But like, it's not, again, they're there, but like, to watch what you were replaced with and you listen to why you were said you weren't there, and the quarterback play was far from competent. And you're just like, this was a defensive game. Our defense is good. Our defense, like the Louisville game, proved that our defense was what it was at full strength. You watch, like, or even if it was Washington or Texas that we were paired against, you're saying that a defense that gave up, I believe, 3 passing touchdowns all season was going to all of a sudden just not be able to do it. I look forward to watching the national championship, but at the same time, you watched it, you just were like, this wasn't the message, the clear message in which we thought. And forget Florida State. We didn't deserve it. Say it. Cool. You can't tell me that team that Georgia marched out there in the Orange Bowl would not have put up a better performance against a Michigan or a Washington than what we saw. Like, they were 19, they were with 29-0, 29 wins in a row. They lost once. Why didn't you use the excuse that you used for TCU? For Georgia, who was a 2-time national champion, defending national champion. And that was literally it wasn't like they got blown out by Bama. They lost. Just like Bama lost to Texas. Actually more impressive than at home. But, it's just, those are the things that kind of like, you sit back and you watch these games, the games that matter. And you're like, that's what it was. I just was expecting to see, I was watching, hoping to see, like, okay, I'm going to really feel like Georgia or Florida State shouldn't have been in this game. And I can't say I did. But that's kind of my whole thing with that.
Hey, George.
What's going on, fellas? Sorry, I was running a little bit behind this afternoon.
No worries. Appreciate you being here. George, Renegade Report. Get over there, folks. We will drop the links again for all 3 of the platforms for these 3 throughout the show here. James, I'll ask you this question, not that everybody can't chime in, but from a player perspective. So Chris talked about, well, you both talked about when the names started to drop on game day, and I'm assuming that wasn't out of disrespect. That was more so out of keeping Georgia guessing as late as possible. And then once guys start to make a decision, I got to think that if Jared Verse says I'm going to play, and Johnny Wilson says he's going to play, and Keon Coleman says he's going to play, then other guys are going to say they're going to play. But there's obviously a tipping point at some point where some players are like, well, if none of those guys are playing, why should I play?
From what I understand, that's basically how it was going down up until, like, I always tell people, when a slight happens, don't listen to somebody right away. Emotions are still raw and everything was there. But I think as it got a little bit further away, you're like, man, I don't want it to end like this. I want to get one more last go with my brothers, talking to Kalen DeLoach. And I think what happened was obviously Johnny Wilson had some really serious, not serious, but he had some injuries that he just needed to let his body heal so that he can go perform as good as he needed to for the combine. There was no fear of injury. It was just he was already kind of banged up and just needed some rest. Keon and Jared Verse, I think it was more of a what more do I really have to prove? It was a tough decision, but it's kind of like, what do I need to do? What more do I need to do for this? But I believe Fisk, Farmer, and Bethune went down to Miami with the intention to play. I think and even Jerry and Jones and Green, I believe, went down with the intentions to play. I'm not gonna say this is exactly what happened, but I have a good feeling that when they just talked to Mike and they just really looked at this, hey man, you've given me a lot. If you want to play, you want to play. But man, I'm not gonna ask you. You don't owe me anything else. You don't owe me another, like Fisk, you got some ouchie boo-boos you need to rest for the combine. You don't owe this to me. Farmer had hand surgery, and like as a guy who's played with a broken hand, it don't tickle. It doesn't feel great, especially when you have to engage and use your hands. It's just like, man, you guys don't owe us this. Like, go, I appreciate you trying. And I think that was Mike being a little bit more, in my opinion, I think Mike was being more thinking about their future as opposed to letting them come off of the emotion of wanting to play for your brothers. But I don't think it was any kind of skullduggery or strategic, like, because I think Georgia just felt I've got cats and I know what they run and I'm going to run what we run and make them have to beat us out of it. And even in it, like, no troll aside, there were 3 interceptions. And I talked about this because I got, Carson Beck is from Jacksonville, attended Mandarin High School, the school that I coach at. And his coach was my son's godfather. We watched the game together. And I was talking to him about it. And he was like, Carson on paper looks like he had a great game. And he did. But man, he's like, James, there were 3 interceptions that you guys dropped. There were 2 fumbles that you guys should have recovered. That was 5 drive stoppers. But when you look at who got like Conrad Hussey, a true freshman, you look at some of the guys that got those things, they're just in positions where to make the play that they're just not used to making the play. Destin Hill, great catch, great over the shoulder catch inside of the 5, just outside, foot just outside. Like, good throw by Brock Glenn. And I'm gonna be honest with you, watching the ACC championship, I didn't think Brock could throw the ball forward. Like, I was terrified. I didn't know what the hell we had going on. So to see that version of Brock Glenn, like, made me feel a little bit different. But dropping number 21, how many drop passes did he have that could have been first downs and could have extended drives? I'm not calling him out of being, but just saying the thing. But he's not. That's not where he's been at. So that's why I say when people like, if we talk ball, we talk ball. We lost. But man, Keon probably makes some of those plays. Johnny makes some of those plays. Jaheim makes some of those plays. They've dropped it too, but in big games, they made big plays. I wish that we had that better showing. But like I said, man, anybody who really believes that, again, you're trolling or you don't really know football. And again, Kirby's statement at the end of it was really like y'all need to fix this. Like, Kirby was like, I shouldn't have had to do this. This wasn't. It was almost like this ain't like he almost want to say this ish ain't right. But I had to do what I had to do. But like that's the big thing. But like I said, I don't think we were trying to play with Kirby's head. Kirby's too good for that. Like, I think it was mainly, and then these guys have agents. These guys talk to each other. They probably already know the real going into it. But I do wish we could have gotten them all together for one more time. Because again, you see, look at actually, you want to know indicative of what would have happened? Have you seen what's happened to Alabama since the end of the game? I believe they had 9 players enter the portal within 15 minutes of it being open. Like, imagine if Alabama was supposed to play in the in our spot. Or Alabama, excuse me. Imagine if Alabama's playing Louisville in the Orange Bowl, Alabama would be the one that wouldn't have anybody left to play, and we would be talking about Saban a little bit differently. But hey, losses happen.
Yeah, man. The difference is, and y'all may have covered this in the first couple minutes, but the way I see it, Mike Norvell, yeah, he, to answer what Mark was talking about, he probably could have talked a couple extra guys into staying. He has that currency with him. He probably could have asked, but like James said, he never would, because what happened after going 13-0 and immediately not being able to celebrate that championship, being told no, everything that he has preached, building this program for the past 4 years, bringing it like to where it is. He asked everything of these kids. He doesn't take it easy on them. These, the winter workouts, everybody talks about it. They're insanely crazy. The culture is great. It is what it is. But, everything that he preached to him for 4 years basically got said, okay, you did everything you were supposed to do. You can control everything you control. And they said that wasn't good enough. So he got it. So it's like he wasn't gonna, somebody had surgeries, the different guys that had off season, surgeries they got early. Look, if it was a playoff, they'd have been there. Alabama, they got to go. We all saw it. We saw the game on national TV. We saw why the players didn't. If you couldn't watch that and understand why the Florida State players were upset and didn't play, it is what it is. Would you have liked to had everybody? Yeah, but I don't think it's like a thing to where they were going to play. All of a sudden they didn't. I think why announce and then get beat up on social media for a month? They wanted to be there with their brothers. They weren't leaving campus or whatever. They just weren't ready. They weren't going to risk it. They were getting ready to go to the draft. But yeah, nothing nefarious behind it. Just a once in a decade situation. Once ever. It's something that'll never happen again in college football. Never happened before. And it just is what it is.